Hello there and welcome to the Croydon Constitutionalists podcast, Episode 2, bringing classical liberalism to South London and beyond via YouTube, Stitcher and the Apple Podcasts. My name is Dan Heaton and my partner in podcasting today is Mike Swadling, the co-founder of Croydon Constitutionalists. So hi Mike, what do we have to discuss today?
Thanks Dan. So I want to bring an update on Brexit, obviously perhaps the thing that we most known for. Where we are today, what's happening in Project Fear, and really critically how you can get involved in the campaign locally here in Croydon. And then talking a bit more about Croydon, talk about the sad departure of the Croydon citizen, and ask some questions about whether your taxes are well spent by our local council.
Thanks Mike. So moving on to Brexit, one of our favourite subjects here on the podcast. Where are we? What's been happening today? We've got cabinet ministers talking one way and one going the other, and people saying that they think we're moving on to a Canada plus rather than Chequers. So Mike, this whole Chequers thing, this Chequers proposal, is it dead?
I struggle to see how it's living. The Monty Python dead parrot does spring to mind. Maybe if you put enough volts into it, it might get there. Or maybe a better analogy, as I think of it, is it's alive in the mind of the owner, or the pet shop owner in the case of Monty Python, and the Prime Minister and her dead parrot, Gavin Barwell, in their case. Chequers doesn't have the support of the EU, doesn't have the support of the country, doesn't have the support of the Conservative Party, who reasonably form a government and therefore are quite key in getting that support. It's hard to see where it goes or why it goes. I'll rarely say something nice about the EU, but they're pretty clear. They have three models. You're a member, you're Norway, or you're Canada. And various versions, you might be Switzerland or Canada or a member, but there are various ways of being involved in the EU. You can't get a mix and match of them, and that's perfectly reasonable. They are entitled to come up with their own rules for themselves, as we will be once we've left the EU. Chequers doesn't conform to that. I don't understand how hard it is for people who are employed full-time to do this to not understand that.
I think you're right. It just doesn't seem to have the support of the Conservative Party. I don't think it has the support of the Labour Party at all. And the Labour Party is saying, well, some of them are saying, well, we need to stay in a customs union. Well, that's not leaving the EU. That would be, I don't know, something like Turkey possibly, which doesn't have frictionless trade with the EU, but does have all the tariff-related issues. And indeed, the actual Labour front bench is saying that the Labour Party will vote against, by the sound of it, pretty much anything that Theresa May comes back with. Now, it might be that there are some Labour Brexiteers who will vote a different way. It may be that there's some of the sort of Chuka Mooner people may vote a particular different way, depending on what deal she may come back with. But essentially, the vast majority of Labour MPs, as things presently stand, are saying that they're going to be voting against whatever Theresa May comes back with. So she does need to get that support of the Conservative Party pretty much unanimously, and of course, crucially, the DUP.
Just on that point, the Mogcast today from Jacob Rees-Mogg, well worth a listen to anyone who's interested in podcasting. Jacob predicted or suggested that he thinks there's something like 25 Labour MPs that might vote for a Chequers deal, and made the point that there's vastly more in the ERG, in the Conservatives, who wouldn't vote for a Chequers deal. A plain and simple fact, the Conservatives won a majority, and a large number of them are not prepared to support this. How can they hope to proceed with such a plan? I don't know.
That's right, and I think Steve Baker was on TV today, I think this morning, and he reckons that there are 80 at present who wouldn't vote for it, 80 Conservatives who wouldn't vote for anything like a Chequers deal. And he says that even if any such vote was whipped, as other votes have been whipped by the government, he thinks there'd still be at least 40, and he put that as a, with no pun intended, Conservative estimate of people who would definitely vote against it. So I just don't see how it gets through. Like Mike says, the EU have said they're not having it. Okay, so if they're not having it, why should we have it? Now, they've already set out, apparently some time ago, though we were not informed of it at the time, thanks for whatever reason the government chose not to tell us, was that they've offered us basically a Canada deal, which does make a lot of sense because we're already aligned regulatory-wise and whatnot. We've already got pretty much a lot of free trade. It's not actually as free as you might think it is, but we've already got those things in place and standards and what have you. So it makes sense to them to have that free trade agreement. Now, what the plus or square root of whatever it is, we'll have to see. Maybe it involves some services. Maybe it doesn't actually. As someone who works in the financial services industry, yeah, there are some advantages to the services market, but it actually isn't a complete free market in services. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. And of course, the IEA have come up with a report which justifies a sort of Canada deal, as have the ERG from the Conservative Party perspective. So the model is there for Theresa May to seize upon. It seems that her only real reason she doesn't like the Canada deal, if you believe what she said after she'd been to, was it Salzburg, and basically got insulted and what have you, was that there's this Irish backstop position, which pretty much means that, yes, you can have this free trade deal, Canada plus, what have you, except for Northern Ireland. So the offer is only on the table for Great Britain, not Northern Ireland, and she cannot countenance Northern Ireland having a different regulatory regime, different customs regime perhaps, and then there's this whole backstop scenario that's being discussed. But this is all part of a conflation, to my mind anyway, and I know, Mike, you spoke about this a little bit when you were interviewed recently on Radio Sputnik about the Irish situation. It's been conflated completely, and I'll tell you why I think it's been conflated. I think it's because Ireland currently has a very low corporation tax, and the EU would like to harmonise things like corporation tax, especially within the Eurozone countries. What they're doing is they are saying to Ireland, keep backing us, whilst we're having these negotiations, and you know what, we won't go and harmonise the corporation tax, so we'll let you keep your low corporation tax so you can keep having these companies go over, set up shop there, and then sell into the rest of the EU. This is a system which has seen insurance companies previously leave the UK, we're the biggest insurance centre in the world, pretty much. I think in fact we are in the world. Yeah. And move to Dublin just because of the corporation tax, and it makes no difference whatsoever. How can you have an insurance company named Zurich that's based in Ireland? Well, there you go, apparently it is. Also, Ireland is due to become a net contributor to the EU's coffers, because believe it or not, the Republic of Ireland is actually now a reasonably well-off country compared to some of the Eastern European countries and countries obviously like Greece that are in a terrible state. Maybe the EU is going to say to them, well, we won't make you pay quite as much in as you might have thought we were. So I think that's the reason why the issue's being conflated. But if we look at the reality of the situation, we're still going to have a common travel area between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, indeed between the Republic of Ireland and Great Britain. There's a relatively small amount of trade that occurs across the border between the Republic and Northern Ireland. Far more occurs between the Republic of Ireland and Great Britain, the mainland if you like, than with Northern Ireland. Basically, it's just agricultural products and dairy products going from one side of the border to the other. It's not a problem, it's not massive amounts of money involved, and it's just not something that you need to concern yourself with. If you were concerned about smuggling and things like that, well, you might want to think about the fact that there's already a regulatory border in many ways. As I said, there's a different corporation tax system, it's a different income tax system, there's different duties on beer, there's obviously a different currency already, and there's a different, quite different legal framework in many areas. So there already is a border in many ways. And something, and I'll give a hat tip to Guido today on his Order website, for reminding me of this point whilst I was having to think about this podcast. The Irish already have a foreign country doing their customs check in their country. So you can do what's called a Shannon Shuffle, right, which is if you fly from England to Shannon Airport, you just wait around a little bit and you do all your customs checks to go into America whilst you're there, and the same thing happens at Dublin Airport. So they're quite happy for customs arrangements to be bespoke where they think it's appropriate. So I really don't see what their problem was with this. Mike, as I say, you spoke to Radio Sputnik about this. What was your view on it?
Well, I think, Dan, you've covered it so comprehensively there. But I just want to go back a bit. I said that plain and simply the Conservatives won a majority. Just correct myself from earlier. Of course, they didn't. They won a minority, but they are the government of the day. The Irish border. You've really hit the nail there. This is an issue made out of nothing. There isn't a major concern between our two countries on that border. There are already separations there. There isn't a major difference between the EU and Ireland there. I don't believe the Norwegian-Finnish border has a huge amount of patrolling down it. I'm sure many of the EU's eastern borders are not hugely patrolled just because of the vastness of the space. And most critically with all of this, I can think of 40 billion reasons for the EU to find a way around this. Canada Plus is a WTO variant. WTO is we're a free nation, and we've added to those WTO terms with a free trade deal. Chequers and or Norwegian deal, any customs union is staying in the EU. The choice is simply that binary. The EU wants us to stay in. We absolutely must not do that. If we go to a Canada Plus deal, the EU has us on WTO terms with them. They will find it harder to export us. They will be £40 billion poorer. Or they sign up a Canada Plus deal, and I believe this government, for right or wrong reasons, will pay the £40 billion bribe to the EU to get that done. And that may actually be an expense worth paying. I think some of those expenses we have to pick up in terms of pensions almost anyhow. Maybe that's not the right number, but to move this forward, someone that could negotiate, someone like the Donald, would be very simply saying to the EU, it's WTO, we're lowering tariffs on the rest of the world, not you, because we can do that when we're free, and we're going to effectively block you out of our market doing that in the kind of access you've got today. Or it's Chequers Plus, you ignore Northern Ireland and there's 40 billion quid. You choose. It will be a really simple, clear model for them, but of course we have a bunch of cowards and quislings in our government that aren't prepared and frankly just have no real world experience to make a call like that.
Yeah, I think you're right on that last point. I mean, whether it's the cabinet, whether it's Theresa May, whether it's the few people she has around her, or whether it's the civil servants who are just cannot grasp the idea that you can be free as a nation. And you sort of think, well, what are they doing there? It's their job to actually run the country on a day-to-day basis, isn't it? So I don't know why they don't want to do their job. Anyway, moving on from those negotiations, and of course by the time you listen to this over the next few days, things will probably have moved on.
Half a dozen times.
Things are moving on by the hour. Just noticed there's a People's Vote march coming up in the next couple of weeks, and I see that certain lovies have decided to pay for buses that you can go on have a free trip into London. So, Mike, you thinking of doing that?
It's a tempting offer. It's interesting, isn't it? There's all these people that went to private schools. Mummy and Daddy had a car back in a time when actually not so many of us did have a car. And probably have never got a bus in their lives, and are now paying them for other people. It's rather fitting of the People's Vote that the elite are chauffeuring around the others in a form of public transport. Lucy Harris of Leavers of London has done rather well here, tweeting out, suggesting to people that they might like to book free travel to London and have a day out. That's been picked up by a diversity of people like Julie Hartley-Brewer, if I get the name right, and Claire Fox. So that they seem to have booked up quite quickly. Isn't it wonderful that they can't imagine the idea that people could get to London under their own steam? Isn't it wonderful that they have to bribe people to march for them? That says all you need to know about Remainers, constantly expecting nothing of their own side and expecting nothing of our country.
Well, you won't get any disagreement from me on that. So let's just have a look at some of the latest Project Fear messages that have been going out. I mean, never a day goes by when you don't get one. But this one particularly amused me over the last few days. Bob Geldof has been mouthing off again. When he's not shouting at British fishermen, he's decided to say that Brexit will be the day the music died. Almost, he says that basically it's going to be a self-built cultural wall or some such thing. Essentially, what he's saying is that we're going to destroy the British music industry because musicians won't be able to tour in mainland Europe, British musicians. And it makes me think, well, how do Americans do it? It must be possible. What are we going to do? They're certainly not going to stop people travelling to France or to Germany for holiday. It's only going to stop British people going to Spain for holidays, are they? The Spanish economy would collapse even further than it currently is. So what are they going to do? Ban guitars from airplanes? Is that what we're doing? They're going to search little minibuses in case there's a Casio keyboard. I mean, this is just craziness.
I have to say, as much as I don't like Mondays either, I do hope we ban Bob Geldof after we've left the EU. If that would be one massive... Forget the trade, forget taking back control. If we can keep Bob Geldof out of the country, I think not just 52%, 92% would have voted to leave in the referendum.
Indeed. Well, he's not said that he's going to leave the country, has he? Which is interesting in itself. But I mean, these lovies, these singer-songwriters as they are, or at least the elite ones, the record company backed ones, they seem to have been arguing for something which is going on in the EU at the moment, which is a new copyright directive. In particular, Article 13 of this directive, which has been passed another stage just a few weeks ago, is a particularly egregious piece of legislation because essentially it's going to make the likes of YouTube and Facebook run certain algorithms to see if anybody is using any bit of music that may, or indeed video, that may have some copyright on it. And those of you that like going on Facebook or what have you and YouTube, you'll see that there's various parodies of various film scenes and music videos or what have you. And these things will potentially be banned because of that. It won't be a case of somebody putting a video up, as it is at the moment. Someone puts a video up. If somebody believes it's breached copyright, you can basically complain to YouTube. They'll review it and they may take it down. So if somebody literally breaches copyright, somebody puts a film on YouTube, then yeah, that's breaching copyright and they take it down. This is putting the emphasis on YouTube and Facebook to do such, to take it down before it even gets up there. So essentially, it's going to ban memes. So so much for freedom of speech. Another freedom that the EU wants to take away from you. And my particular favourite that has been going for a few months now, but seems to have reached an end the other day, is this whole debacle about Unilever. So Unilever, who make pretty much anything really, they are currently jointly listed in the Netherlands and the UK. And what happened was, a few months ago, they decided that they wanted to be listed just in the Netherlands. And the board made this proposal, and the media went crazy saying, "Oh, it's all Brexit related. They don't want to be in London. They want to be in Amsterdam." But it wasn't Brexit related at all. It was simply because they believe that they are ripe for a takeover, and the board. Remember, it's the board who did this, not the shareholders, not the owners. The board who are keen to keep their jobs, no matter what the performance of the business is. They decided to make this shift because Holland has tougher rules in relation to takeovers. Well, it seems that the shareholders didn't like that, and the shareholders voted that proposal down just last week, I think it was, because they do want the Unilever shares to be listed in the UK. Partially, that is because there are various pension funds in this country that demand that the shares are on the UK stock exchange because they need to be in the FTSE rather than on a foreign market. So yeah, I mean, but it's, I think it was what's his face, Maguire, the Labour hack, who's actually been quoted saying it's Brexit, it's Brexit, it's Brexit when the original announcement was made, and has now backtracked on that when the news has come through that it's not moving to Holland, and said, oh yeah, it's got nothing to do with Brexit. So it's the duplicity of these media hacks that are against Brexit and against democracy.
It's pretty clear here. The board's asked themselves if they're chicken tonight and try to get out of being accountable, possibly a bit like the civil servants. It's ironic that the Remainers have used this company where the board has said, but clearly the board's not performing if they're worried about a takeover, because if you are performing, you're not worried. In fact, if you're working for the owners of the business, and again, there's all sorts of similarities I can see here to the Parliament working for the owners of their business, the British people. If you're working for them, you want to be accountable for the risk of takeover. Maybe takeover's in the best interest of the shareholders, not in your best interest, and that's what a board's meant to be working for. And of course, as you say, the shareholders have stepped in and said, no, you work for us and you'll do as you're told. Again, there's a simile here I can see with Brexit. And it's the irony of the Remainers using this, and again, the irony of the Remainers not understanding what's gone in this situation is really all too clear. But first of all, great news for Britain. Big company, big employer, investing its future in Britain again. No great surprise. We've got a great future ahead of us.
Absolutely, but we do need to fight to make sure that this does all come about. So, Mike, how can people get involved in the campaign locally here in Croydon to ensure that Brexit does in fact mean Brexit and we get out of the European Union?
So, if you Google the Croydon Constitutionalists website, email us, get in touch via social media, and you will get our updates, our emails, and you will find out what's going on in the area. The next event we've got booked is Saturday the 13th of October. It's a street stall in central Croydon. It's running from 10:30 to 1 p.m. On the High Street at the junction of North End and George Street. So come on down, meet us. Get in contact if you want any details. We'll be out campaigning to make sure we fully leave the EU. It's really important that we get out and do these things. Street stall, we will see hundreds of people. We will give out hundreds of leaflets, and possibly be seen by thousands of people in central Croydon. We will make sure through pushing the event on social media, we are seen by key local representatives, MPs, councillors, etc. And we will push out short videos and photos from the day to thousands and thousands more across the borough. Action is what's needed. Being a keyboard warrior isn't enough. Being present and being involved is really important. We are approaching a few weeks now, as important as the referendum itself, where we need to put the pressure on. So please get involved. We're asking you to come to Central Croydon, 10:30 on Saturday, the 13th of October, for our street stall. We'll be engaging with the public and just reminding them that this isn't about Brexit anymore. This is about democracy. Our elite, as they like to think of themselves, need to deliver what the British people have instructed them to do.
Absolutely agreed, and I will certainly be there with you on Saturday the 13th of October. Okay, let's move on from just weighty issues as Brexit and on to more local issues in the Croydon area. So recently the Croydon Citizen has unfortunately closed its doors, as it were. Mike, you were very fond of the Croydon Citizen and you wrote for them a few times. Why don't you tell the listeners what the Croydon Citizen was and what's unfortunately gone wrong?
Yeah, so the Croydon Citizen was a citizen newspaper that was allowed normal people to write online on their sort of daily updates and monthly in their physical newspaper that was available from major stations around the borough. They've run for, I think, 5-6 years. I'll be honest, I can't quite remember, but 5-6 years. And unfortunately, they've now closed down. I think the ongoing effort from the staff was pretty immense, and people have got new jobs. People have moved on in their lives, and they're just the ability to keep running it has unfortunately got beyond them, and I fully understand that. The real pity about it, of course, is the Croydon Citizen allowed people... During the referendum, the Croydon Citizen was the only newspaper in Croydon that covered us in any meaningful way. I'd say there are... Yeah, the only newspaper that covered us. There are other local blogs that covered us in unmeaningful ways. Subsequent to that, as someone that stood for office, they've been prepared to cover me for my party. But for anyone for any party, they've covered our Taxpayers Alliance stalls. They've allowed us to talk about classically liberal issues, about minimum wage, about council waste, and a whole load of other things that I can write about that I would not get an airing on in most of the other local media. Now, that's not necessarily to say unfair things about the other local media. They have a much more strict remit, and they will cover you from time to time, but you can't come up with a fresh idea. One of the other great writers, so many other great writers for the Citizen, other writers saying things, but I say great in the sense of there's a number of people that put a real socialist agenda out there. Now, that's not my cup of tea. It might not be your cup of tea. But clear, concise, honest feelings from local people writing about Croydon from their political viewpoint. And I think that's great. You can have the debate. You can have free speech. And I think it's a real loss for us that as a borough that's been taken away. Or not taken away, that's unfortunately ended. It does lead me on to think about, really though, we have a much more succinct political view perhaps, but there is an opportunity to get out there and write about our borough and put across our ideas. So we have the Croydon Constitutionalists website, and there's lots of content from myself. There's bits of content from Hong Wei, who's written for us a few times, or written a few times that we've duplicated across. And then what we'd like to hear is from you. All those good Brexiteers, all you good classical liberalists, we really want to see your content come up there. So if you've got ideas, try not to be libelous, but if you've got ideas and you've got thoughts, with a Croydon perspective or not, it would be great that we can get them down, put them on our website and promote them by our social media. And I know, Dan, you've got some similar thoughts around the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody who wants to give their two penneth on the podcast, you can certainly tweet us at Croydon Const on the Twitter, and we'll certainly talk about those tweets on a later podcast. Alternatively, if you'd like to have a chat with us, we can record a conversation and we can put it into a subsequent podcast. So absolutely delighted to do that. So do please contact us, and we'll certainly be in touch. Moving on from the Croydon Citizen then, Mike, it wouldn't be a Croydon Constitutionalist podcast if we didn't look at yet another story relating to waste from Croydon Council. But this one, I don't even know. Well, I can't really describe it, to be honest with you. So I'm just going to say, Mike, please explain this one to us.
So there's a story in the Evening Standard a few weeks ago now, talking about Croydon Council allocates £10,000 for Sex, Toy and Toilet Performance Arts Festival. Now, this was part of the Biennial of International Performance Arts and Noise, an event, one of the many events that Croydon Council that constantly complains about its underfunding, seems to have money for the arts in the area. Now, the arts, many see as very worthy. My art and your art might differ. My basic bottom line has always been, I don't expect you to pay for my free time and my hobbies and interests. Therefore, why are you expecting me to pay for yours? And if Croydon Council has inadequate children's services looking after the most vulnerable people in our borough, why are they not channeling funds and effort into that rather than spending it on arts? But the question, of course, some people, want a bit of balance here. Is it good arts? Well, here's an idea. I want to give a quote from... so I'm quoting from Tara O'Connor's, who's a local journalist, works for Croydon Advertiser and Croydon Citizen, local democracy reporter, from her tweet last night at the Croydon Council meeting. Public question. why did the council fund an art show where a lady pooed on stage? He adds, if councillors are really looking at people pooing, shouldn't they pay for it out of their own pockets instead of asking residents to cough up? Well, what more can I say? Councillor Oliver Lewis, the Labour Cabinet Minister responsible, I believe, came back with, the festival involved more than 70 performances. I can appreciate if it wasn't everyone's cup of tea. Really conflating tea and pooing on stage doesn't seem the nicest thing that Councillor Lewis could have done. But, I mean, why are we paying for this? Why would anyone pay for it, I'd ask. But I'm a libertarian at heart. If you want to see a lady poo on stage, you go pay for it. Fill your boots. Between consenting adults, you do what you want. But it's not right that people in this borough should pay for that. And frankly, we believe that our money should be spent on potholes, you know, on schools, on children's services, on all of those services, not this kind of thing. And it adds to a long list of things, Dan, that Croydon Council's been paying back. There's one of my articles in the Croydon Citizen. The Croydon Cultural Growth Fund, over an 18-month period, was £624,000. We only spend £200,000 a year on potholes in this borough. £5,000 went to the Crystal Palace International Film Festival. I'm sure it was a great film festival. Why are we paying £5,000 for that? £10 for tickets to the cinema, I seem to recall last time I went. Why am I paying for your cinema tickets? £9,500 for the Festival of Peace. Now, we all like peace. None of us want war, but why do we need to pay for a bunch of tree huggers and hippies? I'm not saying they were the only people attending. £5,000 went to the Oval Tavern. It's a nice pub. I've spent a few quid in there myself over the years, but why are Croydon Council paying for that? So, I mean, this just seems to be the pinnacle of, frankly, insulting the people of this borough with wasteful spend. But it has at least been picked up, and that's a very positive note.
Absolutely. So if you have any stories about any more waste from Croydon Council or any South London Council, please do contact us. Mike, can you tell people how they can contact us?
Yes, certainly. So as I say, via our website, croydonconstitutionalists.uk, via email, croydonconstitutionalists@gmail.com, on the Twitter @CroydonConst, or on Facebook @Croydon Constitutionalists. Google us, find us, get in contact. We'd love to hear from you.
Good stuff. So that's pretty much all we've got time for on this podcast. But just to reiterate, we've got the street stall coming up on Saturday the 13th of October at 10:30. So do please come along to that. We're going to have some future events coming up over the next few months, so do get in contact around that, and just keep your eyes on the website and the Twitter. And as I say, do please get in touch about any other matters. So until next time, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.
Goodbye.